Recording is in progress.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. My name is James Mercy Obatumebi. I am the Chief Executive Officer of World Humanitarian Organization for Peace and Equity. And what we do is to promote peace through advocacy and public enlightenment. And we promote fundamental human rights because everyone deserves his right. And today, as a webinar, a monthly webinar for United Nations International Days, today we are having the International Day for Sport, for Development and Peace. Sport for development and peace. Sport is for development. It is for unity. It is for peace. And that is why we have a specialist on board today to do justice to this day and this topic, bringing people together to unite for development and peace. With us today, we have Joyce Williams, a board member of American Bar Association of African Law Council on Rule of Law Initiative. He's going to tell us more about himself, about ourselves, rather, as she's going to be the first speaker for today. And as well, our guest speaker as well, we have Ezerem C. Kenneth, JP from African Coaches League. He's also here with us to do justice to this as well. And we have Janice Da Silva, developmental coach. He's a diplomat, goodwill ambassador, and former United Nations staff member. We also have Juliet Miyabo, the founder and head coach of Jemas Qatar Indigenous Games of Africa. He's also the CEO of Soweto CSI Council. He's also with us, and others that have just joined on into this program. We are all here to promote these peace and development. So we all have contributions to this wonderful topic we have just brought today, and to celebrate this day of sport for development and peace. So thank you so much, Joyce Williams. We are having you first today. What do you have to say to this wonderful day that we have come together to celebrate or commemorate today concerning sport? So you are welcome.
Thank you, James, for the invitation, and Andrew Networks and everybody who is on today and all the listeners. As James said, my name is Joyce Williams. I am an attorney and I practice in the area of project finance and immigration. I am also the member of ABA, Rule of Law Council. And so rule of law initiatives are very key and important to me. And I also have a soccer agency called iSoccer, which is inclusive soccer, to help grassroots soccer to grow. So, I mean, what a time for us to be discussing and looking at sports for peace and development. As we have seen in the last month, even with the conflict or war that has started in Europe between Russia and Ukraine. And I want to start the conversation from there because there were a lot of discussions on social media, and it's still ongoing as to even when can we use sports to promote peace, when in the past some athletes and sports organizations have been penalized for commenting about conflict and war publicly, or protesting war using their platform as athletes or as sports agents. And fast forward 2022, where if you watch any of the soccer leagues, at least from Spain to England to France, the major five, you all see messages promoting peace and calling for the end of the war in the Ukraine. So when you balance that, it's like, wait, what has changed? or has it always been that case? When we talk about the rule of law is just basically a system of law, institutions, norm, and community commitments that we make for ourselves in order to operate, right? And so in sports is one of those things that really binds everybody and connect us all around the world. We see the major sporting events, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's the FIFA World Cup for men and women, for youth, the under-20 tournaments, whether it's cycling, whether it's even hockey and other things like that, people get around it. It's really a much more relaxed environment for people to have conversations and discussions. And so when we look at the opportunity and the platform that sports gives to us, then how do we use that opportunity to promote peace and development? From the development side, we see, and I've had the opportunity to counsel a lot of students and engage with young people in terms of even their dreams to become athletes. Sports is a way to provide a plethora of opportunities for our young people in development, education, in development activities to really get them engaged in our communities. How do we do these things? By not so much focusing on you have to become a pro elite athlete, but even starting from the grassroots to inculcate the idea of community building, that you are part of this community, you are growing in this community, we support you. We've seen programs like Right to Play that goes into different countries, different communities, and provide platform for young people to do after school activities, keeping them in a pipeline for future development and growth. And some of them, yes, they might have the talent to go on to become pros, but for some of them to, through that education and that relationship and the network that they build right from the beginning, they are able to then go on, whether it's to go to college, to go to trade school, and to really also find opportunities for themselves. And one of the things that we need to look at is that you cannot use sports alone to solve complex issues, right? So it has to be an integrated approach. When you look at ministries in different governments, in different countries, ministries of youth and sports are usually together, or sports are standing alone. But we have to look at those even institutions and look at them as, how are we equipping those institutions to inculcate in their program an integrated approach that sees opportunity for development and for peace. When we look at peace takes, on the global stage, you're looking at the big ones like war, and then in the community, local level, you are looking at even things like street gang and violence that happens day to day. And there are indicators of what, especially when you go to the grassroots level, people not having opportunities, being ideal, unemployment, lack of opportunities. All of those things makes it very easy for young people, for people to get into groups like gangs and start to promote violence on streets. So even with our youth ministries, ministries of sports and industries in different countries, we need to build a comprehensive approach that really builds a pipeline to bring together the young people so that there is an approach, whether it's an after-school activity, whether it's something built into a curriculum, and those who are not in the formal sector of education, somewhere that they can even go to begin to develop and grow and see much more of a purpose and approach to life rather than just being left on their own. I think that I would look at the, in terms of the universal popularity of sports even as an opportunity that we can market and we can show the young people in our communities as a way to just bring them in and connect them with other people who are like them, who are also in the same situation. Right now, we have opportunities because of the internet. So you can have youth in Nigeria, doing something with youth in Ghana, doing something with youth in South Africa, all virtually, but they are connected and they are sharing ideas and they are developing, and together they are able to see value. They're able to really collaborate and build something for themselves and for their communities. So I think that I would pause here and allow other speakers to also come in, and then we will take the discussion from there.
Thank you so much. That is wonderful one coming from Joyce Williams. So it's a great pleasure having you on board. Thank you so much for this wonderful thing you have just done. You have done justice to this topic. As you have said, coming together from one country to other is a development. As you have rightly said, even the ministries from the government, they know that youth and sports cannot be, taken from each other, because to develop a nation, to develop a country, to develop our people, we need a youth and we need this sport as well. So thank you. As you have said as well, we'll be hearing from others for us to know where to move forward. So therefore, Ezerem C. Kennedy, JP from African Coach League. Please, are you available right now? We would like to hear from you.
Yes.
What do you have to say to this?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, greetings everybody, and I wish us the International Day for Sports for Development and Peace. Basically, I'm a sports consultant, the founder of the African Police League, and the JP after my name means Justice of Peace. So I formed the African Coaches League with the aim of encouraging peaceful coexistence in Africa, as well as Friends of Africa, because we believe in egalitarianism, we believe in oneness, we believe in togetherness. So the African Coaches League is an African movement, a Pan-African movement that encourages cohesion, togetherness amongst members. So for the matter ground, I know because sports is one of the coexistence. As we all know, the world is bleeding today, especially those in Ukraine, Russia, and other Baltic areas. So all I have to say is the importance of sports will help to ice water the situation going on in that part of the world. And I am glad for this meeting, which I believe will go viral for them to hear what we have to say, because I believe before the end of this webinar, some points will be taken and some advice will also be taken, so that it will help bridge the gap that is currently going on in Ukraine, Russia, and other areas. Yes, I believe sports is a compelling tool to promote respect, tolerance, and understanding, which could promote peace, which could encourage peace. Realize these areas that we're talking about, Ukraine, Russia, there's absence of partnership between them. Exchange programs has not been going on in recent years. If there was, I don't think this could have escalated to war. That is why we must embrace sporting activities, cultural activities, social activities that will serve as a conduit, in enhancing peaceful practices. Like I always say, this is a process. It must be nurtured. It's not just a once and for all thing. All these points I mentioned earlier, social activities, cultural activities, sporting activities, and even educational activities will help to enhance and keep it going, from time to time, so that both parties will respect each other, will trust each other, will support each other. Most importantly, respect, because in the absence of respect, it will always lead to disagreement. It will always lead to distrust, which is why that part of the world is bleeding. Yes, I'm talking about Ukraine and Russia because that is the the part of the world that is bleeding at the moment. And we believe with the proper application of sporting activities, it will help to bring peace in that part of the world, because we are all peace builders. I'm a peace builder. Ever since the war has been going on in that part of the world, I've not been myself. I almost missed today's meeting because it killed me in my spirit to see innocent people, women and children, dying for something that they know nothing about. So I believe with this, it will encourage solidarity, it will encourage social cohesion amongst the people involved. Just like my sister rightfully said, it's not only at the national level or regional level, even in the areas, communities, counties. We see skirmishes, we see riots, we see crisis. Like myself, I was born in the northern part of Nigeria, where these things are prevalent. You see one community fighting with another community. So with the availability of sporting activities, it will help to put any form of disagreement at bay, because this is one thing that brings people together. It is one veritable tool that eliminates crisis in any form, in any guise. So I am glad to be on this meeting today to also add to what my co-speakers would say on the matter. And I wish us a happy International Day of Sports for Peace and Development. I'm still on. If there's any question, I'm open to answer. Thank you and God bless.
All right, thank you so much. Justice of peace, as we have rightly said. This is all about peace. This is all about development. We really appreciate your contributions to this, because without peace, how we will have been together, different languages, different ethnic groups, different culture, different colors, different race. But it's only peace that can bring us together. And this is what we set to achieve in every sport. And that's why there are cards, warning card, red cards, if there's a foul play or whatsoever in the sport, because sport is meant for peace and not for violence or quarrel. So thank you so much for your contributions to this. Ambassador Andrew Janet da Silva, I think she sent a message because she's not going to be with us, she's not available. If we can have that plate, sir, to be well appreciated.
Well, thank you. And I am a little bit slow here. I'm breaking in a new system, or I should say it's breaking me in. So give me just a moment and I'll be able to share this video. Hold on just 1 second, please.
All right.
Okay, let me try this just a moment, please. Yes. Well, I had it and I lost it. Just a moment, please. Well, Ambassador, I have to ask you to bring in Juliet Mayabo and give me a chance to try to work on this technical challenge. So Juliet Mayabo, if you're there, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that is wonderful. Then we'll like to hear from Juliet Mayabo, the founder of and head coach of the Masquerade in Indigenous Games of Africa. Go ahead, please. Thanks for coming.
Yes, good evening. I'm trying to send my presentation to Prince Andrew so that we can share it. I don't know if whether we can have discussions on the other two presenters, and while I send him my presentation, because I'd like it to be projected. It won't make sense if I don't present it from the screen.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. What I would like to do, if Joyce Williams could be so kind as to introduce to us a little bit more about the work that her own activities in sports in soccer is doing. And then the same thing for Anson Kennedy. I know you mentioned that you're having a bit of a challenge because of the burden on your spirit, but let us know a little bit more about you as speakers, and then that'll give us a chance to deal with our technical challenges. So firstly, Joyce Williams, could you tell us a little bit more about how you're actively involved with sports, having a positive activity in life? Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think that I mean, I'm a big fan of soccer and I watch it for the fun of it, but I actually started looking at it in terms of the implications and the opportunities there when about 2 years ago, a friend of mine shared with me that there are some African students who had gone on a soccer tryouts in Canada and here in the US, and they were in danger of their visas expiring and being out of status. And because the tryouts did not go as planned, so whoever had brought them over had basically abandoned them. So having an immigration practice, my friend had asked if there's anything that we can do to support these students. So in conversation with them, I just realized how even many of their colleagues are out there who come in for tryouts and they are not properly represented, or they are not they're not understanding the implication of the journey that they are embarking on. And these are young students with potential future, brighter future ahead of them. So not making it as a sports pro athlete or getting into the school should not be an end, and there should be other opportunities. For instance, here in the US, there are other opportunities, including scholarship opportunities that they can still attend school without them being subjected to the conditions that they were subjected to. So that really piqued my interest. And then through conversations, I realized that I could actually register as an agent to represent soccer players. And so I did, went through that process with US Soccer and was able to obtain the opportunity to represent players, and that led to the setup of iSoccer. We have expanded even from that grassroots level right now, and we are in partnership with an organization called Shift Media, and Shift Media uses even sports as a trade and investment opportunity. So we have broadened our platform to include sports even as a trade and investment opportunity, and we are looking to actually have our first event around golf in Ghana either this year or next year. We're still working out the detail. So to bring it back to our conversations today, we see that because of the casual or relaxed nature of sports, usually people don't think about the business implications of that. There's a lot of money being invested in sports. There are a lot of activities planned around sports. And so for me and my organization and the network that I'm building, it's how do we redirect these resources so that at the end of the day, it benefits the participants in that ecosystem. Because just before we got on this call, I was reading something on Twitter about a Nigerian player who plays for Huesca in Spain, and his contract has been terminated. And the accounts that he's put that on Twitter, the accounts that he's put on Twitter, it's pretty sad. talking about, the club didn't want him to represent his country, going overseas and coming back, the treatment that he has been receiving. We should not have an ecosystem that promotes that type of treatment of the members that participate in it. So I put a message out there, and I said, definitely his agents and they need to seek counsel to help him fight that. And I hope that FIFA will open disciplinary action even against the club. So there are vulnerable members of our society who are key players in the sporting industry that are being taken advantage of. And how do we even in promoting that peace and development even support that ecosystem of individuals who are left in the vulnerability? Because then it just translates back. When we see our players doing well, I think we saw recently some African players who have gone on to build hospitals, schools, and other things in their communities. So when they are doing well and they are supported, then they can return back into their communities and promote that peace and development that we are talking about.
Well, thank you so very much. Answering Kennedy, I do have the presentation by Janice Da Silva, but please share with our audience a little bit more about what this African Coaches League is and the positive impact you're having right now. Ezra, the floor is yours. Only if you're on mute can we hear you.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Andrew. I appreciate you for giving me. You are part of the African League. The African Coaches League, like the name implies, is a league for African coaches, that is, coaches of African extraction, as well as Friends of Africa. Actually, it's a non-profit and a Pan-African worldwide cooperation and advocacy movement that aims and encourage the bonds of solidarity between all coaches in Africa, like I said, and diaspora ethnic coaches, so that we can help each other grow, we can help one another become successful mentors, coaches, teachers, tutors. Like what my sister Joyce just said now, the aim is to build a lot of coaches and then correct the wrong stereotype in the coaching system in Africa. In recent years, coaches in Africa are all well trained, they are not well paid, they struggle to develop their students, their players, their athletes, anybody. So with the African Coaches League, we're trying to see how we can correct a lot of issues that has been eating deep in Africa over the years. So the organization was created in 2019, and ever since then, we've been trying to build momentum by bringing competent hands. And one of them is Dr. Andrew, who is right on here, and Ambassador Janice, and co. So we've been able to do some programs all over Africa. We started in Nigeria, and Ghana, Lesotho, and then we're still counting because we want to make sure we encourage the coaches, we empower them, we give them a voice, we make them understand some important content that must be on their contract. Recently, there's a Nigerian coach who played his trade in Ukraine, Arsenal Kiev in Ukraine. After his playing career, he migrated into coaching. He got even up to the level of a UEFA A license, even pro license. So he came back to Nigeria just to help to build the Nigerian football. But eventually, they fell apart. He was old for many months, and then he started underperforming. Now, he lost his job. So these are the things that have been happening across Africa, not only in Nigeria. So as an organization, we're trying to see how we can help coaches go into contract, giving them the advice on what must be included on their contracts so that they don't become slaves when they start working. And this thing is common in Africa. It's common, especially in West Africa, East Africa, and some part of South Africa and North Africa. So we are trying to see how we can use the African Coaches League to bridge the gap of the problems that I just mentioned. And then we have been lucky to have competent hands like Dr. Andrew, Ambassador Janice, and the likes. They have been helpful. Their mentoring, their support has helped us to put a lot of things in order and put us on our toes so that we can be able to raise more coaches. Because from our recent observation, our coaches are the best. They are passionate. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want to raise more talent. But the wherewithal is not there. The support is not there. The motivation is not there. So we have been trying to see how we encourage them. That's why we have a platform on WhatsApp. We have up to 6 different WhatsApp platforms, English, French, and the admins, where we take questions, they share their stories, give them advice, we encourage them, and sometimes we get kits from abroad, thanks to the USA, thanks to Canada, thanks to UK, thanks to Denmark, thanks to Ireland, thanks to Sweden. They've been so supportive. They provide kits, they provide coaching equipment that we give to these coaches, which encourages them. And then their responses have been wonderful because the Federation never provides such for them. You know, with this equipment, with these kits, they're able to do their work seamlessly. They're able to, you know, train a lot of children who have been defiant in the streets. So I really thank these countries and the countries that I did not mention. They have been so supportive because over the years, our parents will always say they started playing football with their bare feet. Even up to our generation, a good number of us started playing football with our bare feet. So with the African Coaches League, we've come to see how we can help provide kits, equipment, mentoring, webinars, trainings, and different coaching platforms that will help them, you know, become successful coaches. Because there's this stereotype about African coaches, they believe in certificates. They don't care about the trainings. They feel because the Federation respects certificate more. So we've been trying to quash that mentality. Yes, certificate is good, but you must acquire the knowledge, the skills that is required, which is technical, tactical, and other related skills to be able to train leadership, teamwork, discipline, and other social skills that comes with football, which will also make them peaceful humans and then live peacefully in their families, their environment, and even in their country at large. So that has been what we have been doing in the African Police League. And I still remain grateful to all our mentors, supporters, patrons, donors. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Kennedy, thank you very much. And yes, I'm honored to be on the advisory board along with Janice and Silva and another one of our guests here today, Maria v20220406 from Sweden. So we're all here in full support of you and your efforts. Please notice that in the chat, there have been comments. So I do have the video queued up for Janice, but I would like to give our audience an opportunity for this interlude, in particular, Lloyd Elferty. Technically, we are stepping on his toes because this is the normal time that we have for his event. But Lloyd has been gracious enough to help support us here. And he has a project right now being developed for interns. And I have to speak to you, His Excellency Kennedy, about the importance of coaching to discipline, as you mentioned. But we would like to also provide an opportunity for those who are interested in sports to also step behind the cameras on this platform. This you may know as Andrew Networks. It's also the AHIABGA-TV network. And the AHIABGA is very important. It was actually Janice da Silva and I who co-founded that on the International Day of Peace in 2019. That's for the ad hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors, Activists, and Advocates. So please consider yourself a family member among us, but also know your task is to tap into the resources that each of us have to support your efforts on one hand, but on the other hand, to recognize the valuable resources you have in the youth in all these various WhatsApp communities. For example, Lloyd right now is working to find interns to assist us with getting the word out. As you have rightly spoken, the events in Ukraine are having a very important impact on people around the world. but it's actually the images that are coming from what we call citizen journalists that may be the most powerful. That means that we're now becoming producers of content and not just consumers. So I'd have to ask you, His Excellency Kennedy, to empower all of your people and network to become part of the solution and not part of the problem. But I will, at this point, take a step back and allow Lisa to introduce some of the commentary that she put into the chat. I apologize, Ambassador James, but this feels comfortable, so let me just roll with it. Lisa, are you there? Can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please? And if not, then I'll proceed with the video from Ambassador Janice.
Am I the person that you're trying to call up?
You are she.
All right. Just wondering, I've been a lot of experimenting with how my name's pronounced, but that's okay.
I apologize. I mangle names all the time.
I'm very used to it, Andrew. No worries, no worries. My name is Lisa Nisutphen. I'm a member of the International Dance Council Division of UNESCO, which is United Nations Engineering, Science, and Cultural Organization. I'm officially assigned as the pivot point in the war between the World Dance Council and the World Dance Sport Federation. The activity of the Russian Federation through the World Dance Sport Federation has created a large fissure in competitive dance and dance sport. And the latest large controversy going on is their appropriating breaking, which is one of the 4 pillars of hip hop culture. This, they were told, was a bad idea back in 2017 by yours truly, saying without an understanding of the culture and that which feeds the dance, which is based on constant innovation, they can only hope to destroy. And I would stand against them. For 14 years, I've been working within the Y of the USA, primarily. I've also worked with boys and girls clubs, Jewish community centers, and a number of nonprofits across the country. I did designing dance-based programs for every age in need in an effort to get them to agree to mentor dance back into the schools to try to deal with this major issue. So that we could start to work on building the grid of support so that hip hop culture can run their own sport. The social service system of the Y, and I'm only going to talk about them because they are the largest social service system across all the continents. Their world headquarters are up in Geneva. Y of the USA is only noted for a process that they've used to quell difficulties in sport for 140 years, beginning with basketball in Toronto in the 1880s. This has also been used most notably when the leagues integrated and began that process in 1948 with a fellow by the name of Jackie Robinson. No, it wasn't Jackie Robinson. Let me get this straight. When a very fine player was drafted into what was then called the White Leagues, there was a lot of violence along the way. It took from 1948 to 1972 to get T-ball, and that's for toddlers, toddler ball, out into the social service system. Now baseball itself is not just thriving. We've got 2 leagues, and it's still considered America's favorite sport. This has also been done with virtually every other sport that you see in the Olympics. The relationship between the US sport agencies and the IOC has been fairly healthy as a result. And we do offer baseball, basketball, and all other sport in school systems across the country. These are in mostly after school programs which are programs for youth at risk between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m. when many of them still have parents or that are working. The after-school program serves over 50 million children throughout the USA. Finally, there are many other programs that occur as well, but most governments are more than willing to put up funds to promote sport and art in their nation. This because art and sport give people hope, a sense of self, and a sense of unity. And using a community service and social service programming across the board unifies people greatly. Now, I could talk forever about dance being something that unifies people in ways nothing else can, but I could say that every single day, and there will still be people who won't believe me. But ultimately, this sort of social service system, which is worldwide, is a wonderful way of getting youth from all walks of life, not just in the cities, but in the rural regions, exposed to these things and activities that can give them an upward boost in life, be it emotional, social, or monetary in the end, making them.
So I guess what you're saying basically is that it is in fact sports that includes dance as a method that we can demonstrate peaceful ways of us working together as human beings, and would also provide a guidance for our elders, those that are older than youth, so to speak.
Very much so. The program that I designed that got us the agreement for mentorship from the Y of the USA is called Enhance Fitness. It's designed for people beyond the age of 50 and those who have chronic conditions. It's a way of restoring motion, reducing pain, and making a shared atmosphere for all of us to be able to bring things forward that are just daily living difficulties for those who have that specialty of being above a certain age or having some certain condition.
Well, thank you so very much. We really appreciate your contribution. And I'm sure in the chat, you put your contact information. So we certainly do want to thank and appreciate you. Pastor James, I do have Janice's video now. So if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and share it. Or as moderator, I'll let you decide how we want to proceed. Pastor James, what's the procedure?
Yeah, let's go ahead with that. You can play it, so let's go ahead with it.
All right, thank you so much.
All right.
Ambassadors, honorables, colleagues and friends, this is a message to our webinar on sports and development. The UN observes today and invites all the member states to observe this day as a day that we should remember the importance of sports to our, to the development agenda. And you know that mainly in developing countries, this is an activity that is so strategic and important for the inclusion of youth, for the inclusion of, different groups of populations in society. Sometimes we see sports as something that it's not directly linked to sustainable development, but we need to to change this narrative and see it as a strategic activity that really includes youth. I'm thinking about Africa, where the majority of the population are young adults. And I'm thinking as well at the same time on the importance of sports to prevent, for example, urban violence. That is an issue, a big issue in many parts of Africa, in many parts of Latin America, and other developed countries, right? Is to tell you that in this discussion of sports and development, one should not forget about the spirit of the young adults. They are so creative. They are the generation of creativity, the generation of entrepreneurship, right? So we are more adults than them. We should, listen weeks ago on at the EU and African Union, European Union and African Union summit, annual summit. And I was so, amazed by a young lady from Africa that told all of us that youth must be seen as a development partner. So this is really changing the narrative here. They just don't want us to bring all the solutions, but they want them to build the solutions with the diplomats, the social development specialists, etc., politicians, etc., etc. So it has to do with putting young adults, putting children at the center of the agenda, because this is so strategic. Another issue that I would like to share with you today has to do with the localization of the SDGs itself. We can see sports as a good strategy, a very smart strategy to localize the SDGs, because everybody loves sports. At least the majority of the population watch sports on television, go to stadiums, etc., or when there is street sports happening, you tend to just relax and see. So that sports can gather a huge number of people. So through it, you can advocate for whatever you want in sustainable development. So let's advocate for sports, and but it's something that costs leaders, politicians, but also organizations, donors. They need to put a budget for activities related to sports. So that is how we build development. And most of time we see it as an activity that is not that important that it should be. Sports as well, and nowadays we speak about mentoring, about coaching, etc. Remember that the first coaches at the history was the football coaches. So they taught us how to become a coach, development coach somehow. So this is something we should celebrate as well. Another issue has to do with the inclusion of women within the sports agenda. It's so important and strategic as well. I suggest this group of Hope and AHIABGA, but also the African Coach League and the organization of the ARMO, Williams organization, and all the organizations that are gathering today to discuss sports and development. Let's create a pilot global project where, through the approach of peer-to-peer education, we educate youth, and youth can educate each other. They can educate on through the peer-to-peer approach, how to be included into society, and sports are there to show that it is perfectly possible. We know so many people that came from slums areas around the world that became famous through sports, right? So this is to show you that sports has a powerful role in sustainable development and in the localization of it. So I celebrate what you are doing today. Unfortunately, I cannot attend it live because I have a last minute call for another activity. But I am there with you in spirit. You know, my soul is there, and you can count on all those. You can count on me. You can count on DEV17 for us to create a global movement that really advocates for the importance of sports in the localization of the SDGs. It is important that the UN, advocates, the UN observes this day because sports really transform life. Here we are talking about life transformation. We are talking about human rights. We are talking about peace. Sports can be an important and strategic tool to build peace. When you now I'm thinking about the World Cup, the European Cup, the African Cup, all these cups that are undertaken around the world. I'm thinking about the Paralympics and the Olympics. So sports is a huge and a very a strategic market where people can really feel happy. They can really feel the belonging to the society. So let's advocate for sports. I wish you a very interesting and important, this is an important day that we all celebrate and we all observe. And let's advocate with concrete, activities and programs to foster the sports agenda at local level. So thank you very much. And you can count on us to really accelerate this agenda. Thank you so much. Greetings, ambassadors, honorables,
Well, thank you
colleagues
all
and
very
friends.
much for, excuse me, for accepting and also appreciating what Janice Da Silva has shared with us. I do want to give her recognition, as I mentioned earlier, the co-founder of this organization that's providing the platform. But I would also ask that you take to heart what she's suggesting and let us come out of today with a pilot project, a description of ways the people that are right here, right now. That's what ad hoc means, as needed. And you can only go to war with the soldiers that you have. And we're here on the front lines. So I'm asking and committing myself to work with each and every one of you to make sure that we're able to proceed. Juliet Mayabo, I see that you're able to now share your screen, so I'll turn it over to you. Thank you. But you'll have to unmute yourself if you want us to hear you.
Good evening. Can someone confirm that you can hear me?
Yes. Now we can, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prince Andrew. And good evening to everyone and our host, Mr. James, and all protocol observed. My first slide actually jumped to the last slide, so I will bring it back. But what I will do, so I would like to, my name is Juliet Miabo. I'm the head coach of JAMA Skaters Youth Development Program. The team is called JAMA Skaters. I'm trying to get to the slide that has my details, because I can always go back. I work with youth, children, also women in South Africa. I focus mainly on what someone would call extreme sport, or what someone would call Cinderella sport. Okay, let me open that last slide, which is supposed to be my first slide. Yes, I focus on what you'd call extreme sport, or in South Africa, they call them Cinderella sports.
Juliet,
sports.
Juliet,
Yeah.
I apologize, but is it possible for you to click the arrow on the panel to the left so that you're able to share more of the screen?
Can we put up the volume?
In the middle, you'll see an arrow. In the middle of the screen on the left-hand side, you'll see all. There's a little small arrow that if you click that arrow, it will allow you to show your presentation more fully. But if not, then please proceed. I apologize.
Is that the one?
It's reformatting now. Yes, now it's showing full screen. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Prince Andrew. Yes, as I say, skating is not a common sport, mainly in Africa, but we all know that there's developments I know in other parts of Africa. It is actually quite a big sport, but without any waste of time on introductions, but I also need to mention that I work not only in Soweto, but I work with all townships in the country. My focus is, or our focus is, on the more vulnerable parts of the townships, because it might happen that you do know townships and you think they're not all vulnerable. So we particularly look at development of sports in the most vulnerable areas of South African townships. What I'm going to do, Prince Andrew, I need to go back to my Mandela slide.
Well, certainly, you know now how to.
Okay, should I just minimize it again?
I didn't hear you, but please go ahead to proceed how you need to.
Okay, excuse me. I'm going. I just for disclaimer, I've decided to use a more of a documentary style in terms of presentation rather than an academic one. I find that as a person who works with sports, for me, a lot is about action. So let me open this again. Okay. Dr. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela said, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. And based on what the other speakers have said, we all know that. And what I'll be doing, as much as there's a lot happening in the world with Ukraine and everyone, I'm going to bring it back to as close to local as possible. And I will be looking at more a South African and African perspective, also touching on issues of war linked to sport. I also like to quote, and which is actually the foundation of my presentation today, to quote Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, peace is not simply the absence of conflict, but the existence of justice for all people. I'd like to highlight the fact that he says, peace is not, okay? Peace is not the absence of conflict, conflict also including war. It is an existence of justice for all people. And in the world that we live in, we know that we all pursue justice. And that's the reason why we are all in the I can call it the business or in the work of development, because we actually, for various sectors, for various reasons, for various communities, we are in pursuance of justice. And we pursue justice because there would have been injustice. In the absence of injustice, there wouldn't be a need for us to work on development to pursue justice. I mentioned the issue that we are actually looking at peace and development as a path to reconciliation, because reconciliation is not just reconciliation politically, but also as ourselves as people. But realistically, sports by its nature is full of conflict. Whether we'll call it judo, whether we'll call it fencing, okay, I don't know what that one is. That's one I need when my laptop doesn't want to share. And then whether we call it karate, or we call it boxing, sport by its nature is actually a management, or it's actually formed and based on conflict. So us as a people who work in sport should be the best people to be able to involve and inform the world around these issues. And as we know, the obvious one, boxing, there's nothing more obvious as boxing as a sport, as a sport that is revolving around conflict, because there's always conflict of interest, there's always tug of war about what people want. There's what people want and there's what other people don't want. If we remember that sports were not always meant to be competitive by nature. Sports was always, for the longest time, was used for training and preparation for war. And that is why most early games involved throwing of rocks, throwing of sticks, using of spears. And as I work in areas of indigenous games, we find that sports such as stick hitting, stone throwing, those come very natural, and people excel in those because I think those are the closest to humanity as possible. And sport initially has always been used also as part of the basis for training for war. I've thrown our friend here. I mean, I know it's Hitler, it's not Russia. Seeing that be part of breaks, I need to be careful what I say, but it is very relevant to what is happening currently with Russia and Ukraine. Let me just go, maybe I'll put it more into context. I try to pick as pretty pictures as possible that reflect war, because I think we have enough on our screens currently. If you think about sports, we have different sporting teams, whether you favor Liverpool or you favor whatever the team it may be. At the end of the day, sport is very symbolic and synonymous to war or to battles or conflict. So by its nature, it's all about competition. It's all about dominance. It's about someone being a victor above others. It's about someone taking over. So it is unfortunate that, but it is real that sport is very close to wars and conflict. And yet for us to look at development of sports, development of peace using sport is a noble but a very important work that we need to do, because as Mandela said, it is the only thing that will actually bring people together. If you look at the rooms and the boardrooms that we sit in to discuss some of the decisions that cause the war or that cause conflict, it is interesting when you look at the fact that the Colosseum in Rome, where it used to be a space for battles, is actually shaped similar to some of the rooms where the senates and the boardrooms that we sit in where we make decisions. And what is interesting is that even the shape of those sittings also transpires back into the shape of the stadiums that we use. So that also visually supports the fact that sports is very closely linked to war and conflict. What we do is we offer each other medals of honor. I wanted to put inverted commas to that, because at times it is medal of honor, but not necessarily medals of peace. In sports, we pursue medals the same way that they're pursued in war. In this picture, as you can see, Tiger Woods is more happy about receiving the medal than Donald Trump actually giving it. We won't say why, but you know, people will sleep with their medals, they'll shower with their medals. And what we've done is we've orientated children into the whole system of medals, war, victory, taking over, being the victor. And then what we then do, also realizing the space of development, because development does not only involve your social aspects, but it also includes the mental aspects, that we can also use sports to develop a certain conscientiousness, as you can see here with the two medal winners lifting their fists, because that says more about their consciousness. It says more about what they believe in, linked to Black Lives Matters. So sports can be used also to develop a conscientiousness within a nation. you'll keep seeing these athletes, because what I like about this picture, about this visual, is that there's always that one person, I almost said one country. There's always that one person or that one country that, using whatever advantage they have, they will try and go ahead, whether through corruption or through might or whichever ways, to try and leave everyone else behind. And that is why we need to continue to pursue justice in order to pursue peace and development through sport. We remember the Olympics of 1939, where Hitler left out the Jewish community from participating, just as a way of basically discriminating and subjugating, because that was the beginning of a big war that followed the whole Holocaust. But what it also means was that sport was actually used to not only put in a positive conscientiousness, but also to use it to enforce a negative conscientiousness. But what is amazing is when Jesse Owen from the United States finally agreed to participate in those Olympics, what it meant was that was in 1939, was that in spite of the evil and the representation of evil that the Nazi regime and the Nazi Olympics represented, it was important that as a humanity, not just Jesse Owen as an African American, to be able to say, yes, we can overcome evil. This is where humanity overcame evil. And what it also shows, that the uncaptured spirit and determination of a human race working together can actually continue to use development of sport, because Jesse Owen didn't just go there on his own. He was supported, he was financed in order to actually, he did well, he won several races, but what it meant, his win was actually a win that was representing everyone else, that was being left out, or what was to come in terms of, World War II. Bring it closer to home, it's easy to focus on what is happening in the whole world and almost overlook or be quick to forget that not less than 30 years ago, South Africa as a country had to deal with our own, I would call it a nation that was in almost 50 years of apartheid lockdown. We also had to deal with the evil of apartheid. And these pictures, they say a lot. There was a point where in the sporting fields, there would be issues and wars about people wanting to use the old flag that represented the old regime. And this flag represented everything else that we're trying to leave behind. And we come from a point where this is, other than Africans being shipped to other parts of the world, this is a type of life that Africans lived not so long ago. We're actually talking less than 50 years ago. In a case where you'd actually walk around and see a sign that says, be cautious, beware of natives. So lest we forget. And what was interesting is that no matter what happens, we couldn't breathe. There was always smoke. I grew up in an environment where burning buses, smoke, tear gas was quite a norm. So I'm linking it close to COVID because it's all about breathing. And it was fun how during that time, smoke and tear gas was almost a norm for us. You'd be getting off the train for no reason, there would be a tear gas being thrown at you. But that was the life. But you see how it ties back to sports. And then in 1958, Winnie Mandela took part in a mass action to mobilize women to protest against the government, but specifically against the past laws, because we were not allowed the freedom to move, the freedom to do as we needed. Without the pass, without the permit, you wouldn't be allowed or you'd get arrested. There's a jail that's still there. It's called number 4. It's not being used. It's now, it's like a memorial space where men would just be thrown in there if they walk around without the permit. And later she continued to arrange various protests. What I like about this, I always ask myself, I wonder where this young man is. And I wonder what trouble he got into for being part of that. But I find it quite fascinating. And we're forever grateful to the world that also contributed and support our fight against apartheid. But linked to sport, Winnie Mandela also saw the importance of using sport to fight in the face of conflict, where the Mandela Football Club became the voice that could be used, because during that time, gatherings were not allowed. So if people were gathering, if people were meeting, more than 5 people were meeting, they would be arrested, because they would be told that they are plotting against the government then. So what the football club became another way that made it easy, that made it easy for the communities to organize themselves, but also for Winnie Mandela to be able to communicate and also influence the minds of young people around what was happening. And such an initiative, as controversial as some aspects might be, was an initiative that actually showed that you need to use the spirit of youth to change the world around you. It also led us to what I call an era of self-definition. So in a space when we were busy ducking and diving and getting arrested, and during the time of apartheid, that was before Mandela was released, a lot happened. You know, there are times where we realize that you don't ignore what is happening, but what you do is you go above it. So society used this time as an era of self-definition, because freedom and justice, particularly freedom and inner peace, starts with yourself. And as a people, we actually, in South Africa, we use this principle to say, with all that is happening, we'll find a way of actually living along it, but doesn't mean that we won't continue to fight it. And people like Steve Biko, who was the leader of the Black Consciousness Movement, would say, I'm going to be me as I am. You can beat me, you can jail me, you can even kill me, but I'm not going to be what you want me to be. And such conscientiousness is what helped us during the time to use sport, you'll see, to actually overcome the whole, the enslavement of the mind that the apartheid government was trying to do. And to quote Max Roach, he said, my point is that that we must decolonize our minds and rename, redefine ourselves in all respects, culturally, politically, socially. We must redefine ourselves and our lives in our own terms. And this informed that era of self-definition. And sports played a very important role for us. As a child growing up in Soweto, I remember I wanted to play tennis as well, but my grandmother brought me a racket, the squash racket. For me, they all look the same, but all I know is that people like Arthur Ashe helped us, a tennis player, helped us to be able to see that we can actually go beyond what we're facing. So though we're limited in our movement, we're limited in our education, we're limited in various areas of our lives, economically and otherwise, but being able to be exposed through the newspaper and some of the media that was leaked in, because the Afghan government didn't allow this, we're able to look at people like Arthur Ashe as a possibility to say that Wimbledon is possible also for a Black child. And also what then happens is there was a whole building of tennis courts in the townships, but what that did is there was a temporary excitement, but that didn't last long. But what is important is that a sport like tennis, of someone, I don't even think if you had ever been to South Africa, someone sitting on the other side of the world, inspired young people to know that, oh, we could actually wear white pants and white skirts and pursue something bigger than what we have in front of us. As a during the time of self-definition, we also looked at Muhammad Ali. This poster, it's interesting, growing up, almost every second house in Soweto had this poster hanging behind the door. It was safer to have Muhammad Ali's poster in your house than to have Mandela's, because you can have Mandela's poster, you might end up in prison. So in the absence of our leaders, we're able to look at sport and sporting leaders such as Muhammad Ali as an example of what greatness could be. So when he used to say, I'm the greatest, so we were not just looking at a boxer saying, I'm the greatest, we're looking at an African man who also took the time to come and visit Africa to say that I am not what apartheid says I am, I'm not what the system says I am the greatest. And his success in the boxing ring actually proved that and actually inspired a lot of people beyond just boxing, but to be able to say, you know what, with hard work, with the God-given talent, you can actually do more than what is expected of you. It also helped that Mandela was also a boxer. But we didn't only look at role models to redefine, who are outside South Africa to redefine ourselves. There's an athlete, her name is Zola Bad. You know what, I just put Mary Decker there because that's her official name. But if you had to ask any South African who's Mary Decker, they might even say we have no idea who you're talking about, because she was named by Black South Africans as Zola Bad. Zola Bad is a taxi that normally goes fast, and it was newly introduced in South Africa. So people were associating her not just as a car that moves fast, but also as someone who carries the aspirations of a nation, particularly women. Zola Bad faced a lot of challenges in because what she had to do in order to participate in world sport, she got a British, as you can see, she got a British citizenship, and she got a lot of flack and she got a lot of challenges. You know, as you can see here, someone says, you can run, but Mandela cannot, you know. And there's a poster that says also, you want to have it both ways, apartheid kills. So as much as the world saw her as a symbol of apartheid, it was interesting that as South Africans, we saw her as a woman who inspired a lot of, I mean, this lady, her story is that she was a domestic worker who got inspired by seeing Zola Bad run, and she also started running and started pursuing a career in athletics, and she did quite well. So we also saw her not just as someone who left South Africa for selfish reasons, but we also someone who managed to escape apartheid. And for us, I think that's what we all wished for. We all wish that, oh, I wish we could escape this. So we actually saw her as a hero, but also her simplicity, because she ran without shoes. As much as she was a farm girl, or she is a farm girl, she's still alive. A lot of poor South Africans could identify with her. So it was interesting how she actually had a dual identity. And I don't know if you all remember this race where she was running next to an American, I forgot her name, and then whether she pushed her or whether the American tripped, bottom line is, because we identified with her so much as South Africans, you know what, we just thought, no, this lady just made herself fall because Zola Bad was about to overcome her. But nonetheless, it's just to show you how one individual can represent in one world negativity and in another positivity. I'll move quicker. Another South African that we looked up to was Gary Player. It was just interesting how my grandfather always wanted to buy tissues that were written Gary Player. I guess it was a brand, that time it didn't make sense. But someone like Gary Player was actually a representation of something more civilized, a sport that is more civilized. There's still only one golf space in Soweto, in Pimville. And very few people went and actually used the golf course. But one thing about Gary Player, he inspired a culture that says not all white people are apartheid or killing white people. So it's almost like we're able to say, okay, you know, there is someone, there are white people who are good out there and are representing South Africa well. Well, he was a millionaire, but we won't go into that. But his fashion style and all the golfers' fashion style inspired a particular fashion trend that was common in South Africa, particularly in the late 70s and the 80s. And it found, I mean, these type of tops and these jerseys, this whole look became very predominant. So it didn't only influence the outlook of how people saw themselves, but also how people define themselves externally. And a lot of the ladies also started also dressing accordingly. That this actually gave a lot of money to Italian clothing and other big retailers that did very well. So still looking within the continent, we're totally inspired by the Kenyans. You know, first of all, we could see that, okay, some of them were running up mountains, others were running without shoes, and there's nothing about them that says they're opulent. There's nothing that says about them that they come from a wealthy country. And the fact that they could do this well, where you have a Kenyan coming first, second, and third in some of the races, actually said, we could also do it. Shoes or no shoes, and having no shoes was very common in South Africa during the times of poverty and apartheid. So that actually inspired us to say, if our brothers from Africa can do it, we can also do it. Sorry, here comes Mr. Player trying to take over. And Maria, I don't know if anyone still remembers Maria Matola. Maria Matola or Motola. Maria Motola from Mozambique. You know, she also did quite well. She was quite an inspiration. And what was interesting about Maria Motola is that she looked like a lot of people from Limpopo in South Africa. And a lot of people will say Maria Motola from Shawela. Shawela is a township in Soweto that has a lot of people from Limpopo. So everyone knew her as Maria Motola from Shawela, yet we all knew that she's from Mozambique. But what is also interesting was the name, because when you have a runner, even if you're listening on radio and you hear that Maria Matola just came first, Maria Matola, just the name also helped to build a conscientiousness of being proud in who we are. Because remember, we came from an era where the apartheid government tried to change all our names. I mean, I'm still Juliet, but my parents decided on that themselves. And people had to take up different names. So when we could hear on an international platform a name like Maria Matola. So there's a lot in terms of sports identification and conscientiousness development. So there's a lady from Shawela, she's actually from Mozambique. Politically, the battle was supposed to have been won. Okay, political freedom gave impetus to social freedom including sport. You know, the long queues that we saw in 1994, where people queued, I mean, it doesn't matter what it took, we all made sure those were of the right age that we vote, because we wanted to finally bring the end to apartheid and also to have a voice, not in terms of just economic freedom and otherwise and political freedom, but more than anything else, for some of us who had an interest in sport, have a voice in the area of sports as well. Prince Andrew, this is where I wanted to play a song. Then I remembered that we don't have the rights. And I'm not going to sing it, but we all know the song. Waka waka, eh, waka waka. It's time for Africa. You see, this is, if we remember this era, this introduced our excitement, not just as South Africa, but as Africa, as we were going to host the first Soccer World Cup. It was an exciting time, and we are quite okay with having, I think coming from South Africa, with having Shakira leading and being the singer there. You know what, we come from South Africa and multiracialism is our culture, but this was ushering a beautiful era in our country. And we were ready, you know, though there would have been issues of infrastructure, we were very ready. And because if you think about it, for all those years of apartheid, we used to have only one stadium. This was the best stadium in the country for Black people. Thus, what I'm pointing at, that this was a grandstand. As you can see, people sit up there. I used to attend soccer games there. Once I was caught in a stampede several times. I never learned my lesson, but thank God I'm still alive. But this, for us, this was Jomo Sono who later opened, he was playing for Orlando Pirates, he also later opened his own club. But we have been ready, we had been sports loving people for a long time. So in terms of mind, soul, we were quite ready. And also maybe in terms of body, in terms of culture, dancing, and we're ready to welcome the world. We also had a boxing academy. It was funny how this was always set up next to the hostel, which was one of the most unsafest places to go to. It's still there, I think it's more user-friendly now. So as a people, we were always ready. And I'm saying maybe body-wise, because as we joined the world, we're then faced with the reality. Okay, obviously, I'll touch on that reality, but the rest of the world joined us. I mean, opportunities came up. We hosted, we won the soccer. Mandela was there, the soccer World Cup. We hosted the rugby World Cup. We won Pinar, Hansi Cronje. This is cricket. So the world actually sang along and celebrated with us. It's almost like there was pressure to do everything while Mandela was alive. And I guess and we are all grateful for that. And a lot was done in helping us to celebrate our newly found freedom. As much as that is what the world was seeing, but the reality is this. So this brings me back to the whole issue of sports development for the purpose of peace, because there's what the world can see you at, but there's also the reality on the ground. And the euphoria of Mandela, the euphoria of being part of the world, the euphoria of having overcome apartheid is all well and great. But at the end of the day, we also saw that development was compromised. As one of the speakers said, development or sports development is not just about sports and kicking balls and swimming. It's also about other issues such as food security that actually, and other areas, psychosocial, educational interventions. We're excited to be part of the world. As a local player, there's what you call local players, the people who've always been playing. We were excited to know that, oh, South Africa is going to be part of the World Cup, South Africa, the world, and sporting opportunities continue to come. And it was an exciting time, and it still is an exciting time because we still hope to host the Olympics. And I pray that happens soon because we've been pursuing, I was part of the support team, I was still a student here. And I was in Cape Town and we were pushing and supporting for the Cape Town bid 2004 to happen. Didn't happen, but sooner or later it should happen. We hope so. So opportunities came, infrastructure was developed, investment, development, and remember when I say investment, it might be issues of finances, but all this happened, which is quite good for our country. Sorry, I touched the wrong button. We've been flying the South African flag quite high. We've also hosted the Miss World, which was part of the team that coordinated that. And I mean, we won Miss World, we won Miss Universe. The South African flag has been flown. Mayweather came and flouted his money, and we also spent money on him. So sports is very interesting because it can be very opulent. It can be about the glitz and the glamour, and obviously easily forget the development part. And this is us being part of the world. Doesn't get more exciting like that. When I touch on issues of development, I want to focus on for now in terms of development in sports. As much as we had the infrastructure and everything else, it became clear that as a country, we were still left in an era where sports was entertainment for us, where competitive sport was only competitive if someone does score, but it was all about entertainment. Because during apartheid time, sports, that's all we had for entertainment, for live entertainment. So when you see the person here, they haven't fallen. It was one of the tricks that or it is still one of the tricks that you do to entertain people, where you you actually rely on your chest and put your knee there, and the crowds will cheer, hey, and then there's another one called Samaya where you dribble, and then the opponent will go the other direction. Samaya, that means he will go the wrong direction, and it will cause a lot of excitement. This was entertainment for us, to a point where, I mean, there were tricks that people learned. And remember that for many years and decades, this is all the soccer, or this is all the sports that people knew in terms of competitive soccer. But it wasn't, I'm saying hard, because I remember some of these games when South Africa had to play with Cameroon and had to play against Ghana. That is where you realize that, no, whatever we had been doing all these years has been child play. And fun and games were over. It became very clear that, you know, when South Africa was playing, you'd be more worried about them getting hurt, but it was all professional. But it became clear that there was a gap in how the sport was developed. So we were meeting the real deal after spending decades of just dribbling and playing and sleeping on balls and using sports as entertainment. Okay, I'm going to jump, but the struggle goes on. I'm not going to repeat that quotation, and then I will go through and then touch on the fact that sports, with the challenges, if not enough is done, you get a situation where some of the teams, such as Kaizer Chiefs, that are known for peace and love, are now starting to protest. So also sport can also be used as a vehicle for change, even currently. So we do see sporting teams and fans organizing themselves to actually have a voice against whatever they're not happy with. I want to touch on the issue, sensitive issues of quotas, affirmative action, equity, because we find that currently those are some of the challenges that we face, where people say, oh yeah, but why should we do quotas? Why should we have more people? Why do you need more Black people? Because there are certain sports that are still predominantly white. But what was interesting was I call it a dilemma. When we started joining the world as South Africa, at that time when we didn't give much attention to rugby, because we believe rugby was an apartheid sport, it belonged to Afrikaners. It reminded us of everything that we didn't want to be part of. But when we were exposed to teams such as New Zealand, who had a haka, you know, and everything about the haka was as African as God, as anything God. It reminded us, it brought us to realize that what we have been defined as barbarian was actually quite acceptable and is actually used by parts of the world to identify themselves. And what it then means, there was a point where people could identify more with Jonah Lomo more than some of our South African rugby players, because he came from an All Blacks team, so it was New Zealand, unlike a situation where we had an all-white team in South Africa. So culture is still part of sports development and very critical. And only until we had Sia Kolisi as our current captain and the one who helped us win last time the world, I think before that, we had been waiting for this moment where we can say there's a bit of equity, there's identity, and we must remember that sports actually gives people a place and a sense of belonging. This is Makantini, one of the first Black people to actually play professional cricket. He's originally from the Eastern Cape. I've written Makayantini, that's his name, from Ezilalini. Ezilalini, I don't want to put it in English, it's better in Xhosa. Ezilalini, it's like rural areas, it's a special, it's almost like a village. So Makayantini was known as a boy from Ezilalini. And in cricket, he really, only when he came that people started paying attention to cricket, and it had been around for many years, and kids started playing it. So sport is very critical for identity development and also giving kids a place of belonging. One of I coach as Gemma Skaters Youth Development and the coach for Gemma Skaters. The development part came in because, as the speaker said, you can't just do sports. We've had conflicts, we had problems with federations that have always been very lily white and that have challenges with all these children from the townships. All of a sudden they have to worry about too many kids, but you know what, even if you are faced with conflicts and tug of wars in federations and developing sports, and what you must do is you must not give up on pursuing justice, because what you do is not for you, it's not just for your country, but it's for the people who believe in that sport and what that sport can means for them. I'm currently involved with a Christian, which involve show jumping and vaulting, with a country partnered with the Soweto Christian Club. This gentleman was one of the people who used to wash horses, but now he's one of the, he was the first Black Christian show jumper. I mean, he's an icon, he's a legend. He has a center in Soweto. They're currently trying to raise funds to get their team to go and participate in vaulting in Germany. I'm just putting that as a font there at the bottom. So there's a fundraiser that's happening. They're trying to send about 12. They've been invited. They're actually the best in Africa. So some of the sports that we're looking at, someone might say, that's just a fairy tale, you know, Black kids doing equestrian, Black kids doing show jumping. It might be in breaking barriers, it might be a fairy tale to someone, but remember that that could be the only dream that a person has to be able to escape poverty. That could be the only dream that a child has to escape poverty. This is from one of the recent rehearsals or trainings that we went to. And we are looking at the price of the poor to give them opportunities. I'll move quick. I'm mentioning archery. I have an 8-year-old. I don't know where he got the passion for archery. He has a serious passion for archery. I think some of the passions children are born with. He loves golf. I don't know where he saw that. He's loved it since he was small, but he has a passion for archery. So, so what someone might see as just pursuance or waste of time, or why don't they kick a ball? Please don't ignore other sports, because a child could excel in the one sport that you're ignoring, and that could be the sport that could actually create development and improve their lives. So whether it's archery or it's skating or it's hockey, whatever it is, do not ignore it. Find ways of exposing children. We live in a global world, digital world. Expose children and assist them as much as they can. And we, because of him, we'll be also including this archery as a sporting code that we are doing. This should actually be easy because it doesn't require that many resources as skating and hockey. In Afrikaans, they say, "But the fear," that means I talk too much, but I'm not just a person who talks too much. I act. I've been a coach for more than 20 years. I started firstly just getting my cousin's kids for equipment for skating. I ended up having to buy for communities and communities, and wherever I went to do my work of choreographing and teaching people to dance, I would always carry a boot full of skates. So there's a history to the Gemma skaters. We do hockey. Yes, we do hockey. We do speed skating. We do. It is this young man with the blue helmet here is one of my top inline skaters, who is also very good in hockey. So we are developing his talent in the area of hockey. In terms of ice, unfortunately, we have challenges in terms of traveling to the ice rink because it's quite far. But nonetheless, we have a team, and I'm also glad to say that recently we got a donation of about 7,000 rands, South African rands, to get more skates for the young people who want to pursue hockey. And I'm hoping that that should be a beginning of bigger things to get the talented skaters to be top hockey players, because it's a big sport in South Africa, and unfortunately currently it is predominantly white with maybe about 4 or 5 Black players in it, and that should change with us. The philosophy that I use as a coach is that as soon as they crawl, they must swim. Majority of the skaters that I have, I'm not a qualified swimming coach, but I've taught more than 150 children to swim. I have the opportunity of having a swimming pool in my house. So that has been used to put to good use. And that has also helped my daughter to be one of the top swimmers in school, because she also got to train. But I believe in swimming as a sport, and one of the things is, even in rural areas, black children are always diving. They're always diving into the river. Diving, it's fun. It's a whole lot of fun into a swimming pool. I mean, they are more interested in diving in the pool than actually doing a freestyle, backstroke, all those things. And for that reason, I realized that we need to explore diving also as a sporting coach. So development of sport is not just about what is comfortable with you as a coach, but it's also linked to what is natural to the constituents of the children you're working with. The second principle is that as soon as they can stand, they must kick a ball. We have Totten Kids Football Club. We start them from the age of 2. We use, and as children love it, they see it everywhere, they enjoy participating. We focus on 2 to 17, and we use that age group to also help identify opportunities for them to play for more professional teams. We are having partnerships that we are pursuing. In all that we do, what we do is we have a campaign we call You Go Girl. So meaning in everything, every aspect of sport that we do, ensure the development and participation of girls, so that we don't have a situation where girls are seen to be mothers or are seen to be or encouraged to go to get married early or to drop out of school. So also for them to be able to explore and extend their potential. The issue of food security is very important in what we do, because with sport, wherever we meet, we always make sure that we get donations to cook, to make food. So as much as children are and youth are interested in the sport, but some of them actually like the fact that at the end of the game or before the game, they'll be able to get something to eat, because food security is always an issue in most communities.
Thank you, Juliet. Our time is up, please. Maybe you should just round up your speech, please.
Should I wrap it up quickly? Okay, I'll just keep quite a bit. Someone would say, why we bother with Cinderella sports? I then say, it's not for cool runnings. We all remember this inspirational movie. I think it's one of those movies that inspired me growing up. It's not just about school runnings, but it's also because whether you get into a certain sport or you don't, young people, that spirit of adventure and risk-taking would push them into those, it's not sport, into those activities. There's what you call train surfing. A lot of young people have lost their lives, they've lost their limbs, and with the lack of sports development and other things, it's actually worth it for us to go in and explore other sporting activities other than the norm. Okay, and whether they're surfing the train, the waters are not limited anymore. We don't have a situation where the seas are just for white people only. What we can do is that we have an opportunity to explore whatever is available for sports, including surfing. It's better they surf in the sea than they surf on trains. For the end of the day, they will surf. Someone will say, oh, but now why are you not just pushing soccer, athletics, and netball? And I always say, you know what, all our lives as Black people, we've been running, ducking and diving, bullets and tear gas, you know, this comes natural. And that's why we are encouraging soccer as a sporting code. But as a coach and as demonstrators with development and other sporting codes we do, we'd rather pursue the ones that people are not always encouraged to get into. I have, building up to the conclusion, is to say that I'm going to remind us that sport has the power to change the world and to inspire us. And also we must not limit ourselves. And it also speaks, what Nelson Mandela says, it speaks to youth in a language that they understand. Sport can create hope where once there was despair. That was Dr. Nelson Mandela again. I hope you've learned a bit about sports and development and how it pushed us as a country, and that to pursue us to go forward as a continent, as the globe, to use sport. And I thank you. Thank you, Prince Andrew. Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Reverend James.
So I'm trying to put up my volume.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a very wonderful presentation. I think she's loaded and she has already planned herself ahead for this program, the International Day for Development and Peace. So thank you. I can see Prophet Anyang raising up her hand. Please, just 1 minute,
Yes,
please.
sir.
Can we hear from you?
Yes, I'm on the
Mute
road, but
yourself and let us see your face, please.
well, I've tried. I'm on my phone. My face comes and goes, so I don't know what the problem is.
Oh,
But anyway, sorry about that. It was up for a while when I was on my computer, but I wanted to commend everyone on the presentation. This was excellent, excellent. And so the points that really highlighted or jumped out at me is that when a couple of the presenters brought it as a global issue rather than just about Africa. I think that there are a number of cases where it has shown to be, and I won't be, how do I jump? I'm trying to drive and do this. But also I like the point when you brought up the history. I think we have to know the history of all these things to understand the best solutions. So that part was really positive for me, along with the fact that it has been tied to conflict. And the Colosseums, the very wealthy, would of course utilize those champions for them, for their own pleasure and their own profit. And so the idea now that those who now are doing the work want profit, that's sort of a concept that's kind of foreign to the history of it. But I like the fact that it's being brought up. And just one thing that might go forth is that at this stage, because we are about peace and reconciliation and going into a new space and a paradigm shift, that bringing forth the idea that maybe those champions of old who would come forth and they got their freedom when they won, is that perhaps we can have not only more people of color as coaches, but also as owners, because traditionally the owners were those who were wealthy and they were not the players. They were always the wealthy. So if now the players can become represented as the owners, then we might have some more leverage in terms of asking for finances. Thank you.
all right. Thank you so much for that contribution so far. Please, we would like, at this point, we would like to everyone to just unmute yourself just to hear from you. Introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and just say one or two things, please, before we run it up. Then I will start from Stefane Shola, please. Can we hear from you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Schuler, and I'm happy to be here. I so loved this presentation about sports, and it woke me up, and I'll tell you why. Um, I have a degree in play. That's one of my degrees. In play, leisure studies, and so it's not prioritized. You don't really tell people because it's not prestigious. It's not education or technology or engineering. It's play. But play includes sport. Play includes cooperative play and competitive play. And I love so much about what you said, Juliet, how um, development, childhood development, human development can much can happen through sports and the role models in sports and the teammates in sports. The mixing, the mixing between cultures, between races, between economic levels. There's so much that can happen in sports and games and leisure participation, which is the first place that gets taken away from school. Play, play in the schoolyard, free play. Throw a ball in the schoolyard. That's all the kids need. That's all we need. But we as adults don't play or do sports anymore. Not much, and and to connect to Prophet Cox, who's all about, you know, indigenous wisdoms and cultural knowledges, it goes hand in hand, the sports and the play. You're out of the intellectual academic mind and you're into physiology and the body moving and health and wellness and um, um, community and interaction and community building. There's so much there, and it excited me so much. And you talked about skating throughout it, and I used to roller skate when I was young. Probably miss, you know, you know. I love that because you would hold hands and go around the corner with strangers, you know, dance and music, the arts, the culture, and the sports can, you know, can bring us to holding hands. We know this from our history. You've shown us how it's crossed barriers, how it can be evil or it can be productive. You know, and you know, there's just so much. So I'm really excited that found people who legitimize play and sport, who legitimize music and dance. You don't have to speak the same languages to do any of those things, you know. And also those people, I'm completing my doctorate at the University of Toronto in education about holistic well-being and social emotional well-being in particular, because we have a youth mental health crisis around the world. Canada is one of the top 5 countries in the world. Who knew that in a Western developed country that is so, you know, whatever that means, Western and developed. Our kids are struggling in North America, Turtle Island, and around the world. So sport and play, like, you know, we've got to try all of these ways that we have not been prioritized because they're not on the intellectual academic forum, which my doctorate, it's about labeling, how we label one with a learning disability or behavioral disability from young ages, and that changes our cognitive makeup, that affecting our self-esteem no matter where we are in the world. So your care for who our system has labeled disabled, which is a deficit model, you know, an asset model, Juliet, like you go just with the kids where they are. It doesn't have to be soccer, you know, it can be, you know, it can be skipping, like one of the best exercises in the world, you know, whatever it is, you know, go with the kid, and it doesn't have to be competitive. It just, you know, support other.
Thank you.
So anyways, that's that.
Thank you so much. Because of our time, we don't have much time. Please, Ambassador Lloyd, please, can we hear from you? Can you please unmute yourself? Let's hear from you, please.
Can I comment just quickly?
Go ahead, Julia.
Just one sentence to say that is why we also do Indigenous games, where that also includes skipping and other fun activities that are not competitive. I didn't say much about that. Thank you, though.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to mention that. So my name is Lloyd Helfrey. I am here in Toronto area as well, along with my colleague that just spoke, Stephanie. And so we are working together to try to actually build this, what we call the Unity Network. And so I just wanted to say hello, and I really love this event as well. I think the presentations were fantastic. Actually, what I wanted to follow up in terms of what Stephanie just said, it's Albert Einstein once wrote, everybody is a genius. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. And so I think that's something that we can remember as well as we move forward, because even sports, look, there's the Paralympics now, so there people can excel even though they may have a disability.
Thank you for that brief speech. Thank you so much. Now we would like to hear from Maria. Is Maria available here, please?
Well, actually, Mark has his
yes, somebody's Mark P. Somebody's raising up hands there.
Mark,
Mark P.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to commend over here Andrew and James.
Okay.
This is by far one of the good presentations that I've attended, and the messaging that has come through in terms of sports is phenomenal, if I might say. It's just phenomenal. There's a lot that can be done from a sport perspective, and as I was listening to Juliet, and I'm forgetting the name of one of the coaches who was speaking prior to Juliet as well. There's quite a few things that can be done and taken into consideration over here. I'll just give a brief introduction about myself as well. Alongside Lloyd and Stephanie and Carlos, I'm also co-founder of UnityNet. And besides UnityNet, I'm also the founder for CarbonShot.earth. There are many activities that or actions that we can take through CarbonShot. But from a sporting perspective, the way it hits culture, community, and people, it is extremely powerful. And perhaps not at this forum, but outside of this forum, Andrew, and even Lloyd and Stephanie, we should speak. There's a lot that can be done on this. And somebody mentioned that there's the Olympics, which are getting hosted in LA. I don't know if it's this year or next year, I'm not very sure. But this should be something that we should look at, and we should look at potential avenues of where we could contribute, where we could join hands. There are a lot of hands over here on this forum right now, and there can be many more hands beyond this forum as well, which we should look to join together and look at what can be done at the Olympic at that stage, because that is a big stage and a lot can be focused back into continents, into regions, into communities where we can build this belonging through sport. I just wanted to say that, but I will touch base with you folks beyond this forum as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. I did raise my hand to reply. Firstly, I do want to let you know that the organization I represent, I'm here in Los Angeles, and the organization is the 5 Points Youth Foundation, spelled out 5 Points Youth Foundation. But it was actually founded in 1984 by Diane E. Watson as the Diane E. Watson Semi-Pro Baseball Authority in 1984, because it was intended to provide youth here in Los Angeles, in particular, those from underprivileged communities, an opportunity to engage themselves with major sports. But looking ahead, it is actually in 2028 when Los Angeles is hosting the Olympics, but we've already launched a campaign right now, Mark. So I do want to ask if Lloyd and also Pastor James could set up a WhatsApp group just for the attendees here and the speakers, because I would like for us to have an action plan going forward as a group. Thank you.
Yes, just to add to that, Andrew, what you mentioned, thank you for confirming the year 28. This gives us ample time, but I think if there's something within that time, I don't know if we have the Pan American Games, I'm sure that'll happen prior to that, but this has just given me a few ideas, and we should talk about that. Yeah, I love this. This is great.
Well, also just to let you know, we are actually campaigning for the World Cup here in Los Angeles in 2026.
Which World Cup is that?
Pardon?
Football. Which World Cup is that?
Soccer.
Okay, yes. Awesome.
Yes,
okay.
We're so. But Los Angeles now, as you may know, we just recently hosted the Super Bowl here. We have multiple stadiums here. We have multiple sports organizations whose very mission is to do what we're asking ourselves to get done. So I'm asking you, Paul, to help us, again, leave no one behind by being the samples of the examples, and let us be the ones that lead the way to change. Thank you very much. Back to you, Pastor. Pastor James, are you there?
James.
Yes, I'm still very much here. We're waiting for Maria to unmute herself and say something. Please introduce yourself and let us meet.
Yes, thank you very much for taking the initiative to organize this event. It was very interesting to hear all of you, and special thanks for Juliet for a very well prepared presentation and much information. It was very informative. And yes, I agree with lots of things that you have said. Also that it is important to raise the issue of what is happening behind the scenes in World Cups, for example. And we have the upcoming World Cup in Qatar, for example. So it is one way to raise the issue of human rights also at the same time. And yes, I do agree that it is very important to include sport personalities and different sports, and also try to achieve gender equality in sports. And yes, I am a part of the AHIABGA team, and I'm also a part of the African Coaches League team. And we are trying to introduce some different activities. For example, we have a water warriors program, and this can be also part of the sports programs. So yes, I'm ready to support this pilot project that you mentioned. And also I would like to commend World Humanitarian Organization for Peace and Equity for organizing these other events for the UN International Days. And I'm ready to support all of these as much as I can. So thank you all once again.
Well, thank you so very much, Maria, as well. Back to you, Pastor James.
All right, thank you so much. I'm trying to copy our WhatsApp group, and I've already shared it in the box. If you can use that to join us on WhatsApp for continuation of this topic we have just put on board today. Please, I would like to hear from His Lordship Vanda Mewa. Is it Mewe? He has been here since the beginning of this program. Please, I would like to hear from you. Please, can you please unmute yourself and let's hear from you, sir. Vanda Mewe.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't recognize that you are talking to me, but I think.
Welcome, Heinrich.
Thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead, please.
The thing is of the people that's convened here on the Zoom call tonight, and to introduce myself properly, my name is Heinrich van der Merwe. I'm from South Africa, live in Vanderbijlpark, and my speciality is agricultural and industrial engineering for the agricultural sector.
Okay.
I think that the most important remark to make tonight is the responsibility. That's the connotation to what we are trying to achieve. You know, we are advocating responsible world citizens. We want to foster responsible world citizens. And there is no better way to do that as to create ambassadors. And with sport, you are creating legions of ambassadors, where people, right-minded, like-minded people, have access to mold these young people to think the right way, to compete the right way, where the value system is the important part of it. And we don't subdue the ingenuity that goes with it, the personal touch that goes with it. So I think that, you know, creating and participating in endeavors where we can mold the clay that is going to run the world. Nothing can be more important than this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I make a single comment on that?
Go right ahead, Juliet.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'll be brief. Andrew, thank you for that. One of the things, just to make you aware that we have what we call the 4D value system, which we use across the board, whether it's on a 5-year-old or on a 25-year-old. We focus on discipline, dedication, desperation. Someone will say desperation is negative, but we're saying you need to be desperate enough to win. So we use the sporting principles. If you are not desperate enough to win and succeed in life, you cannot be part of our teams as a development organization, not just in sport. And the other one is dependability. We've had to include dependability because comes a point where when people receive a certain level of comfort or victory, they get complacent and they're no longer dependable. So the whole thing of introducing values is critical. And one of the things that we looked at that, Henry, you know that your average South African or white South African was conscripted to go to war or to go to the military. So where they receive certain discipline. So we use sport as a way of inculcating the culture of discipline that we normally wouldn't find in a Black community. So as much as we encouraging fun, competitiveness, and development and change, we also strongly advocate for discipline. And we bench you if you have to bench you. So the value system is very important. It's easy for people to adhere to value systems where they feel that they belong. So I fully agree with you. And it's one of the things that we apply even on 2-year-olds, even on 5-year-olds, the 4D principles right across.
Okay. Thank you so much for that contribution you have just made. We don't have time again because of the time frame given to us here. We still have more people on board that have joined us since. That's in one way or the other supposed to talk or make contributions to this, but we don't have much time. And that is why we have just put a WhatsApp link.
I have to contradict you because we control the time.
Okay.
So what I would like to do is if there's anyone else here who has not had a chance to introduce themselves, please take this time to briefly introduce yourself and make your comment about today's topic, if you would. I'm not going to call you individually unless you don't raise your hand.
Andrew, may I?
That's good, that's good.
All right, Erwin, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Ron Rusley. I'm with the Rusley Institute in US here, New Jersey. My comment is actually about something that we shouldn't forget about is that the poor people in Africa or many underdeveloped countries, they probably need some kind of help from us in terms of many of the situations where they can use some of in the sport. I'm talking about sport now. That a lot of them, we can send them some equipment, something that they need over there, whether equipment, whether empowerment through the information dissemination to this youngster who are poor right now, who cannot have they cannot afford doing anything. So one way that I'm trying to work on this is trying to donate some item that either for this youngster to be equipped in the area of the sport. So whether it is a soccer ball or whether any equipment that they can use to develop their talent over there, so that they can practice, they can have instruction from the expert coach, for example, from here, and record it and then send it to them so they can learn any soccer system, anything that sport that they would like to develop. So I've just encouraged something that they can level playing field. So I think I would like to suggest that this is something that we have to remember also, how we can empower some of these young people who at the present time are poor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that new development. I think those in sports knows what to do, and it's a good project for them to know because they need support. If they are encouraged, they move further. So next, the Ambassador Andrew, I think you were calling them over to you, please.
Well, thank you. Just to address the issue that you raised, Erwin, I really believe that what you are as a business entrepreneur, you have a responsibility to show ways that you are willing to make the commitment, and you have been doing that. I would ask that you contact Edrum Kennedy and Janet Da Silva and Maria, or even myself, because rather than be on the sidelines, I think it's important that you get in the trenches. So we're inviting you to be a contributory to this, but specifically, I would like to ask Andrew Kennedy ways that businesses can come in to support your activities, because what we have to do is connect the dots between the youth and those of us in the humanitarian space and civil society with businesses. All too often, it is businesses that have a larger annual gross income, larger than some countries. And we've just gone through what's called COP26, where the world has focused on the inequalities of climate change and the impact on it. Just in the past 48 hours, the United Nations has told us again that we have to force a change. So what I'm suggesting is that we align ourselves with global activities and create pilot projects, beginning with sports, because Andrew Kennedy, I am on the advisory board, so I'm advising you to take up Erwin Russell's offer. So I'll turn it over to you, Ezra, to show us how businesses can support what you're doing in sports to involve the youth.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew, and I also thank Mr. Rossley for this brilliant support. Thank you, because this is going to help us in our project. Remember, I said in the past that we will appreciate the donation of kits, which we will distribute to the teams, and then coaching equipment for the coaches, so that they can be able to have a systematic training session which will enhance their development. You know, so this is one of the ways to support what we do. Additionally, funding is another part that will help us with the logistics, covering the expenses in the area of transportation, accommodation of the coaches and the players, because it is always ideal to have a camp for them. And this is not just for Nigeria alone, it is for Africa and for other Black communities across the world. It's a massive project. So we are open for businesses to come on board to speak with our advisors who are at the best position to see how this can be brought into reality for us to achieve not just impact, but a sustainable impact for the people we serve. So we're open, I'm open for donations and support. Thank you, Dr. Andrew, for this. And I have, in addition, I have a picture I sent to you, Dr. Andrew, which I'd like you to project. I don't know if you saw it on your WhatsApp. Hello, Dr. Andrew.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, Prophet Cox, I do see your hand raised. Andrew, I'll check my WhatsApp. But in the meantime, I'm going to insert a sponsored video for about 7 minutes, because again, part of the reason I'm here is because I'm championing the United Nations Global Compact as a member myself since 2014, but also I was there aware of it at the founding in 2000, when it was Kofi Annan, an African himself, the first sub-Saharan African to actually leave the United Nations, that brought us into what we're now dealing with for the Millennium Development Goals. That's 1,000 years, not 15. The Sustainable Development Goals is only the second iteration of that. So I'm suggesting that what we look at is not one-off solutions, but to find ways we can align ourselves with existing global movements. For example, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they have what they call a decade of action to deliver the SDGs. That's between now and 2030. But the United Nations Global Compact itself now is being led by a woman who is, in fact, from Kenya. So she has lived experience that she's bringing to the table, but also she was a businesswoman, and Safaricom was the organization that she led in Kenya. But they have a 2021 through 2023 strategy for the world to engage the top businesses in each country with the United Nations Global Compact, increase the number of small, medium enterprises, but all this is to be driven by what they call their local networks of civil society. So I'm going to get to you, Prophet Anyanwu, but I am going to show this brief video. Thank you. Just a moment.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
As a human family, we've had an enormous wake-up call to how connected we are with a tiny little virus that comes along and shuts us down.
We all live in this world together. The same blood flows in me and any other person.
We're facing the challenges of an ecosystem that is stressed.
Things are not moving as fast as they should. Things are improving, but not as fast as they should.
The challenges that we are facing, they are materializing so fast that it's not only my children or grandchildren which will experience the consequences if we fail.
To do it, we need to do it together. Collaboration, north, south, east, west, you know, black, brown, white. Strength in the diversity of the human family is what we need right now to get us past this incredibly difficult time. Might sound like it's impossible, but you know, that's what we work towards, making the impossible possible.
20 years ago, a small group of United Nations and business leaders came up with a visionary proposal.
I propose that you, the business leaders here gathered in Davos, and we, the United Nations, initiate a global compact of shared values and principles.
Technology is only great when it works. Just bear with us. Thank you.
Values and principles which will give a human face to the global market.
I always say part of Kofi Annan's genius was he invited business, but he also addressed civil society.
And yes, I'm here in the heart of Los Angeles, so we have technical
Society
challenges
and
all over the world.
labor organizations.
The mission of the United Nations Global Compact is to mobilize companies around the world to align their operations and strategies with 10 universal principles in the areas of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption.
The UN represents the body that aims to drive international cooperation and drive peace and security for humanity. And I think it unifies all of society around this set of 17 goals.
Our objectives cannot be met if the private sector doesn't play a fundamental role. And so the Global Compact is a platform in which all those businesses that abide by the principles of, and values of the United Nations and of the Charter to work together, representing the best of humankind.
For the last 2 decades, the initiative has grown to encompass local networks in more than 60 countries, engaging directly with over 10,000 companies.
The local networks are our global footprint around the world, and they work with us to translate the 10 principles as well as the Sustainable Development Goals into actionable pieces of work for businesses globally.
It is so decided.
Since 2015, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement have provided the most powerful common agenda that the world has ever seen, with an essential role spelled out for business.
L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
Any business that continues to operate under its own self-interest will not be around very long. So businesses that have a strong purpose, that understand how they can make society better, will be embraced by society and will be around for a long time.
Be the change that you want to see in business.
I truly believe that companies who do not put sustainability, the SDGs, in their strategies
they're going to disappear.
The mindset of consumers has changed. They increasingly want to buy from companies that are contributing to society as a whole.
Business must be part of the solution in when we address these big global problems.
The focus has shifted to both the short term and the long term, both doing well and doing good, making profits and making a change. This is a reality of the world now. Leaders need to lead sustainably.
The United Nations Global Compact is leading the transformation ahead, challenging companies to take more ambitious action on the Sustainable Development Goals.
I think it's absolutely impossible to face the challenges of today, the very quick change that is happening, without having the youth leading the way and helping us define the right strategies, the right policies, the right approaches to address the global problems.
The world is waking up, and change is coming whether you like it or not.
Climate justice! Now! Climate justice! Our planet's not for profit! Now!
The world today has got more opportunities than it has the challenges that can be overcome by the opportunities that we have.
You find people in the most desperate of situations, determined to fight for a better future. That's the kind of world I want.
What has changed in a very short period of time is that the narrative is different, and that is fantastic.
If you want to have a good business, you have to mobilize people. A business is a sum of people working to something.
More and more people realize that sustainability is really about making the pie bigger, better, and more inclusive.
I hope in the future all businesses in the world will think about their own purpose. Business can only exist when they have a purpose.
We've got to show progress. We've got to reverse what's happening.
I see the Global Compact as an incredible organization working together with businesses to build a more sustainable world.
We are united across the globe, for the globe. We're united despite our challenges, no matter how daunting the task may seem. We are united by possibilities because this is bigger than one business, because we are better together. We all have the same job. We are united in the business of a better world.
Well, thank you so much for your indulgence, Prophet Cox. I'll turn it over to you, but I do want to challenge both Erwin and also anyone else here in the United States with a business to actually lead this charge to increase the membership of the United Nations Global Compact. It's free for civil society members to join. That includes not just nonprofits, but also labor association, business associations like chambers of commerce, educational institutions, as well as labor organizations. So here in the United States, we have less than 1,000 members of businesses. In Canada, there's less than 1,000 members. My overall objective is to increase globally the number of United Nations Global Compact civil society to 10,000 members so we can balance and hold accountable those businesses whose mission it is to accomplish the objectives that we ourselves are already doing. So that's why we're trying to connect the dots and have commercial enterprises to drive our humanitarian causes and not the other way around. But Prophet Cox, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you'll put that video in the link in the chat, please.
Sure, I'll do that right now.
You have a lot of excellent tools. I just, in listening to the excellent presentation today, and then with Dr. and his comments about the very poor. So what comes to my mind, and even the video that talked about a daunting task. So here's what I believe about the daunting task, that it goes from in utero to transition or death or whatever, because they're finding that young people learn, they they start reading earlier just because their mother starts reading in the womb. So certainly with women and girls to be engaged at whatever level, whether they're pregnant or not, and whether they're elderly women or not. There are bikers and other physically fit people who are well in their 90s. So to be able to include at all levels, I know that youth is a priority, but also that the companies that fund can come up with some funding in terms of meeting some of that population that is underserved, extremely poor, that don't have anything else. In Dollar Tree yesterday, and I picked up something that I hadn't seen in a while called a hula hoop. I don't know what it was made out of, but it wasn't made out of what the ones were made out of when I was a kid. But it is something that you can exercise with. If anyone, those who know what a hula hoop is, I think Stephanie mentioned a jump rope. There's some real simple things that kids in a rural area can do. There are those who even are professional sports people who do fitness that requires no equipment. So some of this does require training. So clearly we need some trainers or those who are trained even in the basic communities around some basic things that will get young people started, pregnant women, whatever started, helps to deal with stress as well. I'm Prophet Anyanu Cox. My passion, of course, is optimal health in mind, body, and spirit. I've seen people who were amputees or quadriplegic, and they still were doing fitness and doing some different kinds of fitness and sports. So the whole comprehensive, integrative, inclusive, global, those are the words that come to mind, and leaving no one behind, which should mean also old people, which I happen to be one of them. But just to know that just because a person is in their 70s, 80s, 60s, whatever, for my grandchildren, 30 years old. So just to keep it integrative, comprehensive, inclusive, global, and truly leave no one behind, and to seek some of these solutions that may be able to even be done on the ground, like a jump rope. Even this hula hoop, I don't know what it was made out of, but it's just a circle you put around your body and shake it, kind of shake it, but it is a fitness because I did it when I was younger. So a lot of those dances, another one, things that can be passed on even within the community. And so again, mind, body, and spirit. And of course, the mind emotional piece is having people encouraged enough to know that they can succeed. And so then the success does not have to be what I say it is. It's but you get the picture. So thank you for putting that in there. You have a lot of good videos, so I would like some of those. Thank you so much.
Sure, Erwin, I see your hand raised. Before we go, before we
comment about some
before we come to you, however, there are at least two people that have not yet introduced themselves. Regan, are you there? Can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself if you'd like to at this time? And Gemma, you've also been here with us through the duration. So if you like now, please introduce yourself. And then Erwin, please go right ahead. Gemma, or would you like to introduce yourself now? Or Regan? If not, okay, Erwin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't know if I get sound properly. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks for joining us.
Please, my name is Gemma Garcia. I'm actually with the Unity Culture and Diversity Network. I work with Lloyd and Stephanie from Canada. I'm in the Calgary area, and I'm very glad to join the presentation about sports and hope for better business and connection with humanitarian causes. So it was like really interesting, gave me lots to think, and thank you. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Regan, are you there? And would you like to introduce yourself? If not, Erwin, we'll get back to you.
Yes, I'm here.
Regan, okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, my name is Regan. I'm from Tanzania, and I actually work with different organizations, civil society organizations here in Tanzania, and I'm currently working with Open Mind Tanzania, and also initiate a foundation that's always focused on the youth and people living with disabilities, and actually with children's in Tanzania. It's called Regan Foundation, and actually we are dealing with all the youth, and the organization the foundation is for youth. So what we do here in Tanzania is trying to connect youth with different opportunities around the country and around the globe, so that each and everyone can have access to different issues and access to different kind of platforms that they can at least showcase their ideas and showcase what they have. So that is what we're doing. And actually, I'm here and trying to hope that we're going to work together, and actually appreciate the initiative that you're doing, and that I'm ready to be part of it. And then if you need any assistance to work with us here in Tanzania, it will be a very pleasure to me and a very pleasure to the country, so we can at least come together and partner in order to work together. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Your sound was a bit muffled, so if in the chat you could put your contact information so that we can reach out to you and follow up with you. Erwin, before I get to you, there's also Mohammed that's here. I think, Mustafa, if you're there, could you please unmute and introduce yourself?
Hello, how are you?
At least fantastic. Assalamu alaikum. Please go right ahead.
Okay, I am Mohammed Mustafa Sanko from Guinea Conakry. I'm glad to be with you for this wonderful presentation, this concerning sports. I thank Madam the presenter, Juliet. Thank her so much. It's a learning zone. I've learned a lot, and I think everyone during this presentation has benefited a lot. We just pray that the aims and objectives come to pass. Thank you very much. I'm working with UnityNet, Africa and Diaspora, as the head of Guinea chapter, and also co-founder of a health NGO here in Guinea, Conakry. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Also, you may notice that we do have people here that speak languages other than English. So one of the key efforts that I'm undertaking is to make sure we have multilingual representation of our content. So at some point, we will begin engaging interns that speak English, write English, and one other language to become part of what we call this Andrew Networks. Technically, the Andrew Networks is a viral brand, and it is, in fact, now being able to spread our work through our Facebook group, the AHIABGA Network, but we do have AHIABGA-TV that's coming online shortly. So all the content that we've been producing for the last 2 years will become available as we are able to get editing assistance to make sure we are packaging it as professionally as we possibly can. Because at the end of the day, our social media is fine, but we still have to reach the broadcast media. That means our material has to be at least as professional as theirs are. But we do have avenues like TikTok and others that allow our youth to demonstrate their skill sets to begin producing public service announcements on behalf of causes like ours that we can then give them credits for in their own bio, if you would, but also give them credits whenever we rebroadcast their content. So it gives them a wider exposure. So Erwin, please go right ahead now, and I'll turn the floor back over to James. Thank you very much.
Yes, I just want to clarify some item. What I'm doing, actually, I'm trying to do drive as far as collecting item for donation. So this is something that I'm hoping that can do. Right now, I'm starting this drive for Sierra Leone, that for school. So right now, what we're doing, for example, is collecting, doing the drive for some notebook, for some pencil, some desk. So this kind of thing that we just gathering together. So it is not my enterprise or anything. I have an institute right now dealing with poverty alleviation. So we try to address many areas, especially in Africa. So we try to do a lot more comprehensive integrated method. So this is including providing some of the necessary item that the youngster, the student need over there. So this is one of the first steps that we're doing, trying to do with the Sierra Leone, and then for the school. So I'm trying to do the same thing with the sport equipment facilities and so on, that we can send it to them. So I'm just more facilitator for drives to collect and then send it to the country we would like to target.
So just want to make sure it's clear.
Well,
We would
thank
like
you.
to have together the power of many. Thank you.
Well, thank you. In the chat, I put a link to the Saga Foundation. Both Ambassador James and I are on the advisory board of the Shola Agboola Goodwill Ambassador Foundation in Lagos, Nigeria. However, Shola has been responsible for delivering over $50 million worth of donations, from computers to medical equipment to school supplies, from corporate donors and governments in Canada through his organization. It's not that they have the funds, but they do have the trusted credibility to get these things done. So I would suggest, Erwin, if you'd be so kind as to just briefly submit or share with me or James an email that would allow us to begin a paper trail to align our efforts together. Now I'm going to briefly share my screen for Kennedy, who asked me to share this with you, and I'll turn the floor over to him briefly and then back to Pastor. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Is that the picture you want it to be shown, Kennedy?
Yes, yes, this is it. See, this was actually the FIFA Gold Project, that is the FIFA facility in Maseru, South Africa, during the xenophobic attack in South Africa in 2019. So what I did was, in partnership with 110 Sports South Africa, and then the Kick for Life, FIFA Kick for Life in Lesotho, the Gazi Foundation and the African Coaches League, we brought coaches together to do a campaign to speak against the ills of xenophobia in Africa. So you see the pictures of coaches from different parts of Africa, coaches from Cameroon, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Lesotho, Namibia, and other parts of Africa. So this is one of the things we do. And like I said earlier about Irene's willingness to support, yes, you're doing a great job in Sierra Leone. I would like you to also consider other part of Africa, like the African Coaches League. What we do is we make sure things goes around across Africa. But I'm presently in Nigeria, so I'd like you to consider also working with us so that we can be able to reach out to other unreached and underserved communities in Africa. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Andrew, for displaying this. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'll turn it back over to Lloyd Helferty, then to Pastor James, and he did put in the link, the WhatsApp group, so anyone here can click that link so we can continue our conversations. Lloyd Helferty, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to mention about Kennedy's request to address all of the nations of Africa. That can be done through the UnityNet Africa and Diaspora Network, which is being led by a gentleman in Sierra Leone. But anything that would be donated or offered, obviously, in the campaign that Erwin talked about, can be offered across Africa, because of course our mandate is to leave no one behind. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Back to you, Pastor, for closing thoughts. Now's that time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We have done justice to everything. Thank you so much. I have to thank Ambassador Lloyd Abati for coming together to join us in this. I know Wednesday is your day for your programs, but you have to allow us doing this. Thank you so much, and all the members that have joined us today. I have to thank all the participants and all the guest speakers that we have invited to this program. You have all done well. I thank you for your patience. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you for your support. I love you all. And on behalf of all governing council members of WHOPE, we have to thank AHIABGA-TV and the networks for this sponsorship of this program. They have been with us since the inception of this organization and this program. And here we are together again. So thank you so much, Ambassador Andrew, for these wonderful opportunities. So thank you for coming. By the grace of God, we'll continue to work together in synergy. And I pray for more grace to every one of us, and it shall be well with us. So thank you so much. Over to you, Ambassador Andrew.
Well, thank you. I'm going to close. So I just want to, again, reiterate, Pastor James, thanks to you. I am the International Ambassador or International Chairperson of the World Humanitarian Organization for Peace and Equity. So I take a vested interest in making sure we reach as wide an audience as we possibly can. I do see some people still coming in. So I'm going to, again, allow anyone that would like to introduce themselves before we close. Now is that time again. This can go on for quite some time, but we only have another 5 minutes to wrap this up. So Lawrence, you just came in. Would you like to introduce yourself or not?
Prince Andrew, just one
Yes,
word.
Julia.
There was in the communication that we sent out on the South African time, it said 7 p.m. So you mustn't be surprised when people like Lawrence and others that came in. We'll double check it, but nonetheless, some people did come in early. So yeah, there was that mishap there. So I'd like to apologize to the people who missed the presentations.
Oh, thank you so very much. I do appreciate that. Please understand that the United States has now decided to move permanently into what they call the daylight savings times. But until recently, we would shift our times from 1 hour ahead to 1 hour back. So it has caused confusion around the world. So if in the future you do see any discrepancy in the time, please alert us immediately so we can address that. However, when people register, it should show their local time, and that I believe is on a worldwide scale. But thank you very much for that comment. Gabriella, I see your hand raised. How are you today? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the organizers for such a great and successful meeting. I just want to introduce myself. I'm by the name Malaika Gabriela from Uganda, a member of Unity Net Africa and Diaspora. I serve at the continental level and at the chapter level Uganda. And I also head and run an organization that advocates and supports the vulnerable elderly persons and the orphan vulnerable children. So what you've shared today is a great idea sports. Actually, the facilitators and the presenters, we've learned a lot this evening on what you've shared. Or sports will only not be for the children. And I think it's also important we get to exercises done with the older persons as they age with strong bones, with strong backs. They can do this aerobics every morning, maybe every evening. So it has been a very good platform for us to learn. I've been listening and taking my notes. And I thank you so much, Madam Juliet and your team, for organizing and teaching us what we had to know in such a time and season. That's all from my end, Prince Andrew. And thank you so much for your time to allow me to introduce myself. Today I'm brief. Thank you, sir.
Well, you're welcome, and appreciated. But just one clarification, Reverend James, it's actually Erwin who has now made a commitment for these Wednesday meetings that Lloyd orchestrated and I facilitated. So technically we have to all thank Erwin for sharing this time that would normally be his time with all of us. Richard, Lawrence, I see you came in. If, again, you'd like to introduce yourself, now's that time. Otherwise, we're going to move to close. Lawrence, are you there? Can you unmute yourself? If not, I'm going to put it to the link into the chat, the link where I'm going to put it to the chat, the link where this will be rebroadcast so that you can either share it or you can go there to hear the parts that you didn't hear before. So Pastor James, I'll turn it over to you for closing thoughts. The ball's in your court.
Sorry, just to interrupt, there's a couple hands up right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, if your hand's raised, please go right ahead. Let's see here. McPherson, I think Gabriella already had a comment. So Mavola McPherson, could you unmute yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. I would like to say I would want to thank the organizers for organizing such kind of meetings. We're really learning a lot and communicating, and you know, it's just so fantastic to be part of this organization. So, yeah, my name is McPherson Mvula. I'm from Malawi. I'm also a member of UnityNet. Yeah, I'm specialized in IT and graphics. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Also, if you came in late, I just reposted the link for the WhatsApp group for this particular day's group that's meeting here that are working together specifically in an ad hoc basis dealing with sports. So this group, even though Pastor James has invited you to the group where we have speakers from our other activities, I believe we will eventually branch off just to deal with this particular group. But thank you so much. I believe that was the last hand raised that I can see. So with that, Pastor James, I'm going to screen share again our global, perhaps before we go, we can all show our videos and give a wave goodbye, and we'll take it out that way. Ball's in your court. If you like to, now's that time.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And James. Not a problem. These are all, we're all in the family here. We're gonna share the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrew. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Stephanie, thank you. Stephanie, thank you. Thank you. Maria, thank you. Mark P, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Go on. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love you. It's wonderful to be here. Regan, thank you.
Pastor James.
Okay.
All right.
That's a wrap, everyone. We're going to call it a day. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Have
you.
a wonderful day.
Bye-bye, Ambassador Andrew.
Bye-bye.